Welcome to Self-Discovery Media Network, formerly known as Self-Discovery Radio. Each week we bring you illuminating shows from those making a difference in the lives of others. They've taken their own journey, they're here to share their skills, their wisdom to help you on yours. You can see more about us at selfdiscoverymedia.com, and please listen to our wonderful collection of shows. Our next show is... She's an educator, and we talked extensively about the need for the right education, but most important, the loving caring a child needs in order to water those seeds for them to be everything they need to be, and we want for them to be in their future. And so I do invite you to go back and listen to that show, because there's some wonderful nuggets of information in there. And this series is very near and dear to my heart. If we don't invest in our children, they become a problem adult, and we don't want to see that for anyone. We want everyone to have a quality of life. So that's why today, in her wonderful statement, which I love very, very much, life without stress is BS. Yeah, it is. If you're trying to say, oh no, all I have to do is cross my legs and go kumbaya and all the stress is gone, you are fooling yourself. Everything we do has a stress factor to it. But the question is, how do we deal with that stress? How do we handle it? And how do we avoid the stress, to the number 10 level? It's always going to be there at the 1 or 2 level. And how do we actually manage it in our lives in a way that it doesn't dictate us? Because we know that stress leads to depression and anxiety. It leads to the body breaking down. It leads to illness. The number one illness is stress, and it causes heart disease, cancer, numerous other things. So let's get it under control. Now, as I said, Susan is an educator. Glasses got to go back on. Sorry, folks. Blind as a bat without them. She's a retired educator with 18 years of education. One of the beautiful statements she made in her last show is that on her 40th birthday, she did what she finally wanted to do in her life, and she was teaching the kindergarten. Her first day at kindergarten was her 40th, and she was finally doing something she wanted to do. She went on to do master's degrees and taught every single grade, and taught those children that are differently abled rather than disabled label. And through that education, she knows that handling stress is something that a child needs to do, a teacher needs to do, because it's a very stressful situation. So fully qualified, and of course now specializes in anxiety and stress. Help us, Susan. We all need to know how to de-stress ourselves.
Well, I wish I had that magic wand. We always used to talk about, the magic within, and it really takes some work when it talks about stress management. In the ebook, I talk about learning to listen to your entire body. What is your body telling you? What are you thinking? Is it positive? Is it negative? Are you fretting about something? What are your emotions telling you? And then what is your body doing? And it's really important to listen to all three parts of your body, because if you don't, one of those parts is gonna get your attention
Yeah.
and give you a wake up call. And some of those wake up calls aren't a lot of fun, let me tell you. Been there, done that,
Yes.
as most of us have been. Um, as a stress management person, I, of course, thought I was coping effectively and dealing effectively with all my different stressors, but my body said, haha, that's what you think, and let's give you a new symptom. So you need to listen to your entire being and how you're setting yourself up. And it goes back to, are you setting yourself up for success or
Mhm.
failure? And that goes with stress management too, because if you think cognitively, oh, I've got this, no problem, yeah, no worries, yeah, reality check 101B is going to be coming around the corner, and uh, it's not going to be pretty. So,
That tap on the shoulder, right?
right.
Or the trip over. I mean, really, life is about balance, alignment, being in tuned with self. Don't take on more than what you know you can cope with. If you know your stress level at this peak becomes unproductive or it's unhealthy for you, don't put yourself in that position. But we don't learn the triggers, do we? You know those
No.
warning signs, the tap on the shoulder, take it easy, don't say no to that. No, no, don't do that. Don't do that. We have to wait until we're flat on our faces before, oh, that's what the message was.
Well, and the warning signs come in different ways for everybody,
Mm,
and it may be that my heart's racing a little bit faster. Maybe I'm perspiring. Maybe I'm eating too much. I'm sleeping too much. Maybe
or
I'm
not
not
enough.
sleeping
Yeah,
exactly, or just the opposite. So, um, your body is going to, I got vertigo. I got ringing in the ears. Other people will weaken their immune system depending on their own chemistry, depending on their own body. So it's really important to listen to how you're thinking to yourself, what you're saying to yourself, what you're focusing on, what you're dwelling on, um, and are you setting yourself up for success? That's always been my line with everybody. It's are you setting yourself up for success or failure? And I watch online with social media, and I think with so many people trying so many different things that, well, I'm going to set big goals and I'm going to have this, this, and this. Well, yeah, I want to lose 40 pounds by Friday, but that's not going to happen either.
what's the old adage, cut off your head?
Yeah, it's like, let's have a reality check,
Yeah.
guys. And one young lady, she was, well, I've got two kiddos and they're under 10, and I'm doing this with my business, and I have these goals, and I just can't understand why I can't get it all done. And it was, well, you know what are your goals? And yeah, you can have lofty goals. We all have lofty
Mhm.
goals, but they're realistic lofty goals, and then you have to break them up into baby steps,
Yes.
into smaller chunks. Because if you don't learn to break those goals down, yeah, I have them, can have my goal up on the wall. I'm going to lose the 40 pounds or 30 pounds, whatever it is, but what do I need to do to achieve that? And you have to set up the steps to do that. If I'm going to continue to go out and not exercise and go out to eat and eat a bag of potato chips and 4 or 5 ice creams at night, I'm not going to lose that weight. So I always use weight as a comparison, because people can they
Relate to
can
it.
relate to that.
Yeah.
It's a real easy way to do that. And so when we talk about goals, or we talk about lifestyle choices, we talk about families, we talk about kiddos, some things we have control of, some things we don't have control of. And you have to recognize that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is choices. If I choose to do this, this could be a consequence. And as such, my body could pay the consequence, either emotionally, physically, or cognitively. So we really need to pay attention to what we're doing and how we're doing it when we talk about quote unquote stress management.
Yeah, I want to hit on that more about the choices, because sometimes those choices we make are expectations. What's expected of us? If you are a mum with kids, you're meant to be the perfect mum. You're meant to be the perfect goddess in the bedroom. You're meant to, look like you're Miss Universe. You're meant to run your business like you've been doing it for millions of years. And everything is meant to look like it's just kumbaya and ease. And that's a false illusion that's put upon us that we feel we need to live up to. And we need to understand the choices we make is what puts one foot sturdily, steadily in front of the other, that's going to bring about what we desire, sure-footedly. And I think we've got to stop living up to this false image of what we should be, because I think that is what drives a lot of people to make choices that don't suit them.
Right. And you have to go back to, like what you said, when I turned 40, that was what my
Mm,
heart, that was what my
right.
passion. And we talked last week, about the child within, and what is it you want to do when you grow up?
Yeah.
What is it you want to be remembered for? I certainly do not want to be remembered for the same things as Gary Vee. Excuse me. We both have similar goals in making an impression and impact on people, but we go about it
Yeah.
entirely differently, because I would not be comfortable doing it the way Gary Vee does.
Right.
You know, doing a video myself is very intimidating. This is very comfortable for me, um, because I'm having a conversation with you.
Exactly.
However, so I have to set myself up for success. And I think it's real important that people start paying attention to that. When I was working with students at the college, I would have students come in and say, well, I want to be a nurse. Well, sweet, so did I at one point in time, but I went to my first anatomy physiology class, and that was a reality check, you know.
Your
Uh,
bum. Yes.
Woo! Uh, but because being a nurse and the curriculum for being a nurse is one of the most rigorous programs there is, next to the doctor education. So, and you can't say, well, no, I don't think you better do that. Well, why don't we try this instead? Why don't we start here with this class and see how you do? Um, and that's um, how we approach, as a counselor, different
Yeah.
people and different things. And I think as family members, rather than saying, oh, well, so and so's out of his flipping mind because they, you know, they want to do X, Y, and Z. It's just like I could say I want to run a half marathon if I've been,
Right.
you know, getting myself ready, and I have the physical ability to do that.
Right.
And I have to know what my own physical limitations are, whether I like them or not. I'm not 30 years old anymore.
Right.
So my body, you know, and as I told you, I'm moving. So my body's giving me a reality check.
Yes.
And so I've been trying to listen to it real good. But
And
there's just,
asking it just to stay with you a little longer.
it's like that the choo-choo train. I think I can. I think I can. I think I can. But it, it's setting ourselves up for success. And you know, just like with a move, I wasn't going to try to do everything in one weekend.
Mhm.
I've been working at it for a month and a half to get everything in this house ready to go to the next house,
Right.
and a week to get that house ready. So people can use whatever storyline works for them to make it make sense. And you have to use a variety of storylines because everybody's uniquely different.
Right.
And everybody is, you know, we all don't get that aha light bulb moment at the same time. And there are certain times, I was talking with Roger Wilkerson earlier this week, and he said something, I'm like, well, no kidding, why didn't somebody say it like that before? You
Right.
know.
Yes.
And
A different perspective, a different point of view.
exactly,
Mhm.
and different presentation and
Yeah.
different style. So you have to find what works for you,
Yeah.
and set yourself up for success, and do not compare yourself to Emmylou down the street.
Right.
You are your own unique person.
Don't you
And
think you have to know your why?
yes, you do. You have to know why you're doing what you're doing. And then the other thing is it a realistic why? And is it a why that is achievable and doable?
And
Um,
comes from the heart, I think. You know,
exactly.
it is a lot of people that do something because they think, okay, I can do this. I've got the skills, and I've maybe got training in something else. So a lot of people turn to coaching because they've been in the business. Now I can be a coach. And for some people, they do fall flat on it because you may have the skills on paper, but do you have the heart that needs to go around it? Because if it's not the passion, if it's not your why, I really want to help people, individuals or smaller groups, people to do this, like you in the kindergarten, that first
Yeah.
day, it took me 40 years to get here, but my why was because all those beautiful little faces
Yeah.
looking up at you in that joy and that joy. That is, I think the why needs to be the heart why, doesn't it? Not why because I can make a good living, I could do this, I could do that. That's secondary. If the heart's not involved in it, you're always going to be chasing something, causing more stress in your life. Which but doesn't mean that you're not going to be in a self-discovery of discovering you're going to be in this job or that job, trying it out. But you've got to go in to discover what that why is, what that heart why is, to bring it out and follow that path, because you didn't know your why straight away, did you?
No, and I came to this path kicking and screaming, as you will recall. So, you know,
Resistance is futile.
yeah, stubborn. There's a reason why it's called Miss Brat. Remember? So, but we don't always see our why when we're in a dark place, or something has happened that unexpectedly, like in my situation. I wasn't prepared for what happened. I didn't even see it coming, to be very honest. So sometimes things, life happens.
Sometimes it's a cosmic 2x4.
Yeah, it
And it's
is.
a complete redirect, flatten you for you to get back up and go in a totally different direction.
And those are things that you need to do, um, uh, with support,
Yes.
not by yourself.
No.
And I don't I have in my professional life always respected boundaries, which is why I have an issue sometimes with new coaches and coaches experience, and some of the questions I've seen some of the new coaches ask. It's like, holy schmoly, sweetie, what are you even doing here? If
Right.
you need to ask that kind of a question, you should not be here.
Right.
And
The
I'm
crossing of the line.
exactly. And so I've decided that rather than being coach, I'm going to be a consultant, and I'm going to go back and change my website up a little bit, because I don't want to be a rah-rah coach. I want to be a consultant and help you get where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And my perspective is not that of a counselor, because I do not have those credentials. I am a school counselor.
Yes.
If you want advice on education, anything related to education, I'm fully comfortable and confident in what I can do. And I think as we go into this new wave of social media and podcasts and everything that everybody's doing, and you and I have talked about this before, Sarah, that make sure that the people that you're going to reach out to have the skills and the expertise to meet your needs.
Yes. That's the
And
that's the reason why we do this at self-discovery media, .com, is that I'm bringing you the people with the skills they've learned through life's journey.
right,
And the thing is, you can listen to them. Do you relate? Is it something you feel a connection with the person? Are they speaking to you and your issue right now? This is, your pre-interview with them. And then when
right,
you reach out to them, you feel that you know them and that they will actually understand what it is you're trying to say. This is entirely why I do this, not only to educate people and inspire people, but to connect people to the coaches or the counselors or the consultants they need, because now you've had a taste of the person. And I think
right,
that is a huge thing on when you're looking for somebody, the due diligence. Don't just quick app or quick this or quick that. Take your time. You are going to be talking to somebody maybe about very intimate things, about things that are very vulnerable. Is that person, do they have the sensitivity? Do they have the understanding? Do they have the skills to help you navigate through this? Because all they're there is to help you navigate through it, right?
right,
And by listening to them and doing your research, you'll get that indication whether they're or not. Don't just kind of go with someone. I went with someone and they were great, and you go then find they're just not your style altogether.
right.
Due diligence.
And that also goes with not asking them to do something that they're not capable of doing,
Exactly.
and,
Exactly.
and recognizing the professional boundaries. And if you are having ongoing panic attacks that are really inhibiting or interfering with your daily life, then you need to go see a medical doctor first and foremost.
Right.
And I tell everybody that you need to get cleared by your doctor, because that's the first thing. We want to make sure that the warning signs aren't something physical, because
Yes.
sometimes they are
Yes.
and sometimes they aren't, you know, but we have to rule out everything. And so I 99.9% of the time will tell somebody, you need to go see your doctor first. and then we can go forward. I want to make sure with the symptoms that you're describing, and taking in, when I do an intake, taking into consideration other factors. um, if I have some current concerns, I will, refer them immediately to mental health services. I have sat there and made phone calls right then and there. Are you comfortable if we make that phone call? Is it something that you want to do? Um, and as I said before, I've had to ask those questions, those hard questions. And when we're dealing with stress and we're dealing with anxiety, we want to make sure that that is truly what we're dealing with, and that the this individual is medically stable at that point in time, because
Yeah.
we don't want to go forward as
And pushing
consultants with.
buttons that,
Exactly.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, look at how many times you hear people who have a big, massive heart attack only to find out they've had a lot of mini ones. And they just
Exactly.
won't. And how many people have anxiety attacks that they think they're having a heart attack?
Hmm.
Right. And also we do know that certain anxieties can go extremely high and push people over the edge to suicide. So
Exactly.
yes, as a coach, consultant, whatever you're doing out there, there is an accountability to you, and you need to know your facts about the person you're dealing with first. And yes, if it looks like that is just beyond the daily stress of managing it, that there is an underlying here, that you can't help them until you know exactly what the full picture is. Right.
Exactly. And especially when we're dealing with stress, we can uncover some real uncomfortable things that people often have a hard time talking about, as we both know.
Hmm.
And I kind of brought out of hibernation the 10 stress bears of life that I used when I worked at the hospital. And because it kind of helps people understand what's causing the stress, and to pinpoint what it is that is really setting me off, or what the triggers are, or whatever word you want to use for your stressors. Um, and then before you can get better, you got to own them.
Yeah.
Because if you don't own it and you're just going to brush it off, you're not going to go anywhere. It's just going to keep resurfacing.
Yeah. 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 And
And
that's part of the facing. You may not like an issue,
exactly.
and it's not going to go away by going, no, 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 it's not here, it's not here, la, 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 la. I'm sorry, it
Right.
doesn't work that way, does it? And
No,
but when you've decided, you've made that choice to face it, what's really causing this stress, this pain, this anxiety, and you've really looked at what's triggering it, you now actually are empowered to actually recognize the problem. Now you can look what you can do about it. But trying to run away from it or ignore it, it's going to chase you wherever you go.
exactly. And empowering people is the most important thing. And you empower them with knowledge,
Hmm.
you empower them with skills, you empower them with a toolbox, as we've talked about before, of resources. I see online a lot that with this whole meditation is taken off into a lot of different areas, but there are many of us, well, people like me,
I
that
mean,
there's no way I can sit there and meditate. I don't know if you've seen the movie Eat, Pray, and Love, where the first time she tries to meditate and she's got 40 different conversations going on in
yeah,
her head.
that's
Well,
me.
that's me.
Yes.
So, I went back and I learned many years ago, when I was trained in biofeedback, what relaxation techniques are, and how to teach people to teach their bodies how to relax, because there's specific set of skills that you build up on.
Yeah.
Just like you're getting ready for a marathon, you have specific set of skills. Weightlifting, basketball, football, whatever it is you want to give as a comparison. Same is true with relaxation. Okay, it took so much time for your body to get to this level
Yeah.
of stress. It's not going to magically go away, and that's where the whole diet thing came up. It's not just
No.
magically going to go away. Um,
And there's
Yes.
no magic pill for it. Whatever the
No.
pill is doing, it's temporary. It is not something that you can take long term or that will have any positive effect long term.
And it's really important to learn to listen to what those warning signs,
Mm,
and what can you do. Well, if I'm at work, I just can't get up and go for a 10-minute walk,
hmm
but I certainly can get up and go for a 2-minute walk to the bathroom, go into the bathroom and take a deep breath in and relax. Or I
Yeah.
can walk outside the building and take a deep breath in and relax, and
hmm
just take a minute to regroup. And if you do this often enough and regularly enough,
Yeah.
your body's going to know what you're asking it to do.
Right.
It becomes a spontaneous, because I teach people, you breathe in, I am, and you breathe out,
Yes.
relax.
Right.
And my body is now to the point where when I start this motion, it knows what to do.
Right.
And when I do this, it knows what to do. Um, and even doing this now, it's just like,
Yes.
oh,
Yes.
whoosh,
Yes.
so it knows. So your body, you have to take control of it and reteach it, because
Right.
you haven't been listening to it for a long time,
hmm
and it's been giving you some reality checks that you may or may not like.
Yes.
And so you need to work with it and teach it. And do not, just like with the weight, do not expect it to happen and be reactive immediately. It takes time and it takes practice. Um,
But
but
it goes too, though, when you're talking about the weight and the mind. We've got to understand this mind is a programming. It's everything we've learned that's been
right,
put in there, right? And it's going to run on the program it's been inserted with. So if you're wanting to change that programming, you've got to go in there and put in new information. It's hard to go in and just delete and insert new.
no.
You have to go in and replace until the mind goes, oh, okay, this is a new repetitive pattern that I need to adapt to, right? And I can leave the old programming alone. And we have to understand that we have to be consistent
That's
and
right.
persistent with this new patterning before it's going to get to a point where, as you said, you just take a deep breath and the body immediately knows, oh, that means calm down,
Yeah.
right? That
But
means center yourself.
right. And I've been doing that exercise for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell you straight up, when I was in my worst state 3 years ago, uh, when I wasn't listening to my body, it wasn't that way. It
Right.
it wasn't. My body wasn't responding to the way I wanted it to, because I hadn't been listening to my body.
Yeah, the other
So
stress factors.
yeah, so we really need to pay attention to those things, and reminders of setting ourselves up for success rather than failure.
Yeah.
Um,
And again, don't put too much expectation on yourself that you're going to, it's all going to, you know, well, I've been doing this breathing thing for a week now, nothing's happening. If you put anxiety towards the breathing, you're stopping the anxiety for adopting this new program as a release, right? You're putting anxiety to it. So a lot of our mindset as to how we look to this, our dialogue, our inner dialogue, our verbiage, the way we
mhm.
speak to things is going to dictate a lot to how that programming is going to be accepted and have a response in your body. It's the same thing if you're negative to your body or your mind, you're going to build up stresses. So is that come into your programming as well, the
It's
verbiage?
yes, the self. I call it the self-talk.
Mm-hmm.
How you talk to yourself, and how do you react to yourself, and what you're saying to yourself on a consistent basis. I've even had people tally things on how many times they've said something negative to themselves in an hour's time.
Yeah.
Um, in the old days, we would have people put a rubber band around
Yes.
their wrists.
Done that.
Uh,
Ow.
yeah, so every time that you're thinking something negatively, that you give yourself that reality check 101B,
Right.
uh, because, as you said, changing the mindset, changing any behavioral pattern takes time. Somebody says 28 days. Well, you know what? Some people need a little bit longer than 28 days.
Right.
Not every behavior is changed in 28 days.
Right.
And some behaviors are part of that person.
Yes.
So then you have to come up with other strategies
Hmm.
to help them cope more effectively that work for that individual person. So if I suffer from major depression. So if I don't take my medicine and I have my warning signs, then I've set myself up for failure because I'm not taking my medicine. So, and I really, I had, like a lot of people, okay, I'm depressed, but it's not a life, it's not a forever thing. And I've come to the realization after fighting with it for 20 years that it's an illness.
Yes.
And so I go back and, do as I say, not as I have done. um, Take care of yourself and listen to yourself. It's not always the easiest thing to do, but you alone are responsible for your choices. Nobody else is.
Yeah. And going to depression, a lot of people, look, well, what do you have to be depressed about? Or, are you depressed again? Or just snap out of it. And, that is not something you can do. Very often depression is, the chemistry in our bodies or the chemistry in our mind is just not functioning properly. Suffer from SAD, seasonal,
Exactly.
I don't know what SAD stands for, but it's to do with the seasons
The
and,
season changes. Yes.
winter blues,
Yes.
right? And some people, it's the triggers when they're not getting enough sleep or they're overstressed. It throws them into a depression. We've got to look at, where does the root of our depression come from? Is it something that we can manage on our own because we've learned some skills? For me, it's music. However, this year for 3 months I had depression and I couldn't move it. I just couldn't shift it. Eventually it managed to come out of itself, and that was the first time in a number of years that I'd gone down that deep, because I had gone and done what I know I shouldn't do. Had got overtired by over pushing myself, got ill, carried on working through the illness, and just put so much stress on my whole body that my body just shut down. And this is the price I had to pay. We don't want to pay that price. So, this is why it's really important you know your body and you're in partnership with it, right? You're in partnership with it. No,
Exactly.
I have to say no to that because, the stress level right now is here. I can't do anything more that's going to put me over the stress. But, don't use it as an excuse. Use it as legitimately, that's your boundary.
Yeah, and I think that's the key word right there. Know what your boundaries are.
Right.
Know what your own personal limits are, because you alone are the one that knows that.
You're
You
living with
alone,
you.
exactly. And don't let anybody else, whether it's a friend, a partner, um, working environment, you need to set your own boundaries and do what you can do. Um, and that goes back to setting yourself up for success rather than failure.
Yeah.
Because as you and I have talked, we become our own worst enemies
Oh,
sometimes.
yeah. Yes.
So one of the reasons we're both very passionate about is we don't want somebody else to have to go
No.
through the garbage that we went
Yeah.
through.
That's the reason why you're doing what you're doing. You're sharing your knowledge so
Exactly.
people can, this is a pothole. You don't have to go in it. This is how you go around it.
And sometimes that pothole is very, very deep. And
Yes.
so,
Yes. I can
you
swallow you up.
know, I always visualize the Grand Canyon,
Yeah.
so
Yes.
uh, or one of the valleys at Yosemite. But then I always end up going, when I take myself to Yosemite, I always end up at Bridalveil Falls, and that's one of the most beautiful places on earth. So I make it balance out.
Right.
But each one of us has a journey, and it's not a straight line.
No.
And it has its curves, and it has its dips, and it has its ups and its downs. And people will say, well, why me, it's
Yeah.
always me, blah 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 blah. Well, my dad always said, if it wasn't for bad luck, I wouldn't have any luck at all.
Right.
And I could have just really harbored on that and let it be negative and
Yeah.
yucky and whatever, but it's like, cool, well, at least I got some kind of luck. So it's how you perceive it, how you deal with it.
Right. I
um,
mean, it could be, the old expression, it could be so much worse. Right.
exactly.
And
you
the thing
know
is deal with what you've got. And I also love the old stitch in time saves
yeah.
nine, right?
Mhm.
And it's like, it's coming up, or something is, nip it in the bud now before you're going to pay the price later. right? And you don't want the Grand Canyon. You can, pick yourself up from a little pothole, but you don't want to fall into the Sinksville. For me, it's quicksand.
Yeah. But Sarah, each one of us has our own
Yes,
thing that it
yes,
makes sense. Yours
yes.
is quicksand. Mine has always been the Grand Canyon. Don't
Hmm.
ask me why, but my safe place, my most wonderful revealing place is always Bright Oval Falls at Yosemite, and I'm very blessed because I'm an hour and a half away.
Right,
So those are one of those, to make it make sense for those of you
right.
that don't know where I'm at. I'm in Central California, so I am literally an hour and a half away from Yosemite. So
And
that
you can
that
go and recharge there and regroup and realign.
recharge, and the
Yes,
sequoias are just right over there, so I can
yeah,
go either place
right.
to
It's
and
a
I've got
safe place, isn't it? I
it
think
is.
that's something you need to have, is that even if you're in your house and the kids are driving you crazy, then you need to have a safe room, a sanctuary room, that you can go and close the door and take those breaths and just release and recenter yourself, before you go back out. If you can't get in the car and go somewhere,
Well, and in the house, it can just be a chair,
yes,
or just a rule in the house that mom needs a timeout,
yeah,
or mom needs some special time. We're gonna give her half hour, 45 minutes, whatever mom needs, and dad is in agreement on that.
yes,
Um, and that requires communication. And if you don't have communication, then that's a whole
that's
nother
another stress.
Pandora's
Yes,
Pandora's box.
yes,
But mine. I posted on I forget which one. I think it was Twitter. What do you do to relieve stress? And I said, I love going to shop for material. I just love material. I love to sew. I love to quilt. I think one of the best parts about moving has been going and finding all my treasures that I'd forgotten about, um, because apparently I have a lot of fabric. And uh,
time to get
so,
sewing, girl.
yeah, I know. And I put digging in the dirt, and you don't know how many people responded to
Mm,
digging in the dirt. Getting back into nature, getting down
yes,
on your hands and knees and digging in the dirt, to me, is just very therapeutic. And there are times when I was going through a hard time. It's like, okay, I'm going to bury this one right here. I'm going to bury it where nobody can see it. I don't ever want to see it again. And I'm going to plant a beautiful flower on top. And
hmm,
so it will nurture it. And I've had a lot of conversations with myself, uh, uh, things like that. And if you do, you're not wacko or crazy
no,
or anything. Um, we all have our own self talk and ways of getting rid of some of the burdens or the stressors or the things that are just weighing heavy on us that
right,
we don't have any control over. And again, it's about choices and taking back that control, um, and learning skills and strategies to control yourself. What can you do if your heart starts beating? What can you do? I mean, of course your heart's beating, but if your heart starts beating faster,
right.
what can you do?
How can you
What
bring
can you
it
do?
down? Yes, how
Yeah,
can you
it's like
equalize it? Yeah,
whoosh. For
yeah,
me, it's just like I literally do the hand moment,
right,
but that doesn't work for somebody else. So
right,
what can you do
yeah,
at that moment in time? What is your calming? Some people it's a waterfall.
yeah,
Some people it's a rock. If I have a piece of amethyst around me, or if I light a candle, or I'm a big one with sage. So if I burn some sage, that's really calming to me. Um, it just depends on what works for you, because what works for me, it's it changes.
yeah. I mean, we really do have to know it. I live in a beautiful city, Victoria, BC, and it's like a city village. I can literally walk into the city, and I'm right there by the waterfront. And there's people coming and going because it's an international city. It's our government city as well. And you're watching, the uh, what's the name, planes come in, seaplanes come in, and the ferries that go off to Seattle, and you're watching people clicking cameras and the seagulls taking advantage of everything. And it's I can sit there in that sunlight and the beautiful wind. Wind is so important to me because I feel it clears things, it keeps things moving. And then you listen to the rustle of the trees as they're communicating and dancing to that music of life. And when you tap into that, you're having a conversation with the trees. You're at one with the wind, you're flying with it. You know, that water and sea air is just cleaning your lungs, and the laughter and the exploration of the people around you uplifts you. Is put yourself into a place that takes you outside of you and
Right.
helps you reconnect with self. You know, basically by exteriorly putting myself in all of these places, when it comes back into me, it's calmer and it's more at peace. And you know, now I can breathe. So sometimes it's removing you from you, isn't it?
Yes. And if we don't have the resources or the tools to drive where we need to go,
Yeah.
there's a park, you
Yes.
know,
Yes.
there's, I have a backyard with grass. I love going out walking in the grass.
Hmm.
To me, it's a balance.
Yeah.
Um, my boyfriend thinks it's kind of disgusting, but I really, he doesn't see the balance in it.
Right.
Um, but again, it's perception,
Yeah.
and and it's what your individual thing is, and that's the most important thing with stress management is what works for you.
And you don't need to justify it with anyone else.
It doesn't
Nobody
matter.
else. No.
No, it doesn't matter,
No.
because as long as it works for you,
Yes.
that's all that matters.
Yes.
And then if you've balanced it and it's working, but then you've got another warning sign, then you need to tweak it a little
Yeah.
bit, because every time you start to you have control over a situation, there's going to be something that's going to challenge it, and you're going
Yes.
to get a different warning sign.
Right.
So you need
Yeah.
to, it's an ongoing, because it's just an evolution. It's just ongoing. So you need to just, okay, fine, this is the new one. Okay, cool. What am I going to do now? Rather than, oh, good grief, what now?
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
it's how you choose to take it in.
And you know, before you kind of get hysterical over it, you know, it's like it just taking a step back. You know, I've had an awful lot of what I call redirects. I'm
Hmm.
on one path thinking this is the path, and then something's come, you know, total dead end, or the, you know, crashing into the wall. And it's used to be, but why? The signs were all here. And basically it's yes, but you went down to that cul-de-sac for a reason, but it's for you to redirect and go over this road. There's down this little lane over here that you've ignored because you just headed straight for the wall. Sometimes when we just accept the dead end is for a reason, or whatever's happening to you is for a reason, instead of getting emotionally wound up in it, you know, it's tap into our emotions without becoming emotional, because there's always a message in it, isn't there? There's always a redirect somewhere, and you're not going to see it if you're completely stressed out.
And it may be, you may not see it right away.
No, and you're not going to see it unless you're calm.
No, well, and it's just like, I can say, well, why did this have to happen to me? I was doing a good job. I was, I had high success and retention rate. I was helping students graduate and get on to their next level. Why did this have to happen to me? Well, it happened to me for a reason, and now it's coming back into a different reason.
Yes.
And you call it redirects. I
Mhm.
call it, a new path.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it, it's still the same thing,
Yes.
because life changes, and you can either choose to stand there and be grumpy and upset and mad that this happened to me, or you can go to the next level and say, okay, now what is my next, and what am I going to do? And what do I need to change, and how do I need to change the way I look at things?
And am I willing to? There's an excellent book called Who Moved My Cheese?
Yes.
And you know, it's basically hits the four key perspectives, which is, you know, I'm a true colors coach, so it's our four key personality traits.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the different reactions to change. You know, change is inevitable in our lives. As you said, we're not linear. We're not meant to go in a straight line. When you look at energy, it is constantly moving in a frequency, in a fluidity, everything, our blood, our oxygen has to move constantly in a fluidity. We are meant to do the same. We're not meant to be stagnant or go straight in a one line. We're always going to be twisting and turning. And change is going to come along. How do we deal with it? And I highly recommend people read that book. It's Dr. Spencer, MD, I think, that is the author. And
I don't remember.
it's a wonderful metaphoric book. It'll take you half an hour to read, but it's so poignant because afterwards you kind of ask yourself, which one am I? You know, am
Right.
I give me back my cheese? I'm going to sue someone, or is it like, oh, that cheese is over. I'm going to sniff out something else, or I'm going to scurry for new cheese, or it's going to take me a while to realize it's gone, but now I'm going to get up and go and seek. And you can see yourself in that, and that will help you actually understand your process, but be willing to go through the process. I want to ask you about how biofeedback works.
Okay. So what biofeedback is, it was developed by Dr. Eric Pepper and Dr. Joseph Kamea back in late 80s, early 90s. Excuse me. And what it is there are two ways. One is they put what's called a thermistor on a finger,
Mm-hmm.
and that's to monitor your body temperature. So as your body relaxes, it gets warmer. Your hands get warmer. Your hands and feet will get warmer. The first two sensations you feel when your body starts to relax is heaviness.
Mm-hmm.
The second sensation is warmth. So when we're teaching people, we're using biofeedback, and what it does is the warmer my body gets, the more calming I am. So what we do then is and I couldn't tell you what the machines look like now because it's been several decades since I've done biofeedback, but it will tell us what the body temperature is externally.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a key. And because a lot of people have what's called Raynaud's disease, which is cold hands and cold feet.
Mm-hmm. I know a few
So
people that way, constantly cold.
constantly cold.
Yes.
So then you use the relaxation technique, um, and it's heavy. My hands feel heavy, and then warm. So you start and you say, my right hand is heavy, and I'll dialogue it 4 or 5 times. Then I'll dialogue my left hand is heavy, and then I'll dialogue both my hands are heavy. And that's week 1. Week 2, we add the feet. And then week 3, we add the whole body, with the exception of the forehead. The forehead is always cool and smooth.
Mm-hmm.
Because if your head gets too hot, you're going to get a headache.
Right.
The other thing that they do is, well, some medical professionals will use the EMG, which is the muscle activity. And they do a lot of that now with spinal cord injury,
Mm-hmm.
to see what muscles are reaction to what stimulus, and to try to calm the muscles. And then they also use the EEGs to do the brain stimulation. And I know that I personally have referred a friend's son to Dr. Pepper, who used the EEG monitors to help control his seizure disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's seizure free.
Wow.
But there's a very specific, I mean, there's a whole
Yes. Gamut.
gamut of things that have to happen for that.
Mm-hmm.
But biofeedback is, in its simplest form, monitoring your body's response to the relaxation techniques that are being taught, presented, given, whichever way you want to determine it. So, and I didn't do my homework. So one of them is autogenics. The other is progressive muscle relaxation. And then the other is visualization. And so the other one is just where you tighten.
Mm-hmm.
You tighten, and you hold it for 3 seconds, and then whoosh, you relax, so that you can feel the difference. Because a lot of people, exactly. So a lot of people, they're like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. They're all hunched
I'm
up,
inclined to do that. I'm inclined to hold my breath and go tight without even realizing it. Yeah.
Yeah, and what you have to do is know that that's what you do,
Yeah.
and then okay, wait a minute. Oh, okay, body check. And I notice when I've got a lot on my mind, like this week, is like when I'm laying down, I'll notice that I'm like this
Yes.
when I'm trying to sleep. Well, my body's not going to go to sleep like that.
No, no.
So then you've got
Hmm.
to regroup, and so I'll use those techniques, um, and I've had to use them more because I've had to re-educate my body, because we've had a little tug of war,
Yes,
and
she
you are
has
going,
been given a health challenge that
yeah,
she's
yeah,
partnered with very, very well, managing very well, but you have to understand that partners, they're here to stay.
that's right, and so we have to find, as you said, that balance,
Yeah.
and that's real important. That
Balance and boundaries, I really think, right? The double B, balance
yeah,
and boundaries.
yeah, it's really really important. If you find your own internal balance, whether it's cognitively, emotionally, or physically, and then your own boundaries within your world, whatever your world may be,
Yeah.
um, and set up some rules, if thens. If this happens, then I can do this. And you know, if you're worried about what happens if then write it down. If
Yeah.
this happens, then I'm going to do this. If
I think that's a very good point, actually, especially in the beginning. Because as I said, sometimes, I'm an asthmatic, and sometimes I just find myself, I'm holding my breath, or my body is tense, and I'm not even aware of it. I'm busy doing something.
exactly
All right. And I kind of, oh, hang on, and it's time to chill out, allow my body to loosen up, even shake it off,
right,
take the breaths and get back into to sync again. But, if this is something that you have a pattern in doing, then maybe have a little stick it note somewhere. Are you breathing? um, to get up and take a walk or do this and that until it becomes the programming becomes something that your body knows and will tell you what to do, right? But especially if you're prone to something or something is a habit of yours, uh, remind yourself, set a reminder on your computer if you're working on your computer, time to get up and go for a walk or take a stretch or do something else, right?
one of the big things, I was listening to an interview with Chris Brogan, and he said, well, I have a ladybug timer that I've had for years, and
Mhm.
I set my ladybug timer to
Yeah.
remind me to do certain things.
Yeah.
And I kind of chuckled because when I was a kindergarten teacher, I had this one young man, and he had the attention span of an ant. And so we made this agreement, and I had this really cool, we call it the slime timer, but it's just like a timer that you turn upside down, but it was full of this really cool green slime.
Right.
The
Yeah.
kids just loved it. And so we put it on his desk, and I said, okay, when you get done with this and you do your work, but you can't get up until this
Right.
timer's up. So, that gave the student the visual,
Yes.
and it was a little distracting the first time, and I had to redirect him, well, now let's get to your homework, otherwise I'm going to have to take that away, because we don't want to do that. We want
Yeah.
you to have some fun. So and then notice the dialogue that I said. I didn't say, well, I'm going to take this away if you don't
Right.
do this,
Yeah.
and that goes with you. What are you saying to yourself?
Exactly.
And how
Exactly.
are you saying it to yourself?
Yeah.
Because if you're being a big giant poop to yourself, then then that your body is really going to get mad.
Yeah.
Okay, and we go back to my line, life without stress is BS. Well, your body is going to give you some BS really quick.
Oh God. Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah. And
Because
but it's never mind your body. I mean, your mind. When you are stressed, your imagination goes into gear, and then it's the what if, and the what if is never anything positive. It's, well, what if that goes wrong? What if that happens? What if this happens? And the next thing you know, you're in hysteria
yeah,
because you've imagined everything wrong because you're in a stress adrenaline, right? So,
yeah, and you got to cut it.
yeah,
You got to get to those warning signs
yes,
way before that.
yeah. What
And
happens
that's
to a
what
rubber band that's been stretched too much? Ping.
pew,
Yes,
and that's why I wrote the ebook, and I'm going to be
yes. I
writing
was about to
another
ask you about that. Please tell us
uh,
about the ebook, everything
the,
that's in it.
the ebook goes over what are your cognitive, what are you thinking, what are your emotions, what emotions are you feeling, and to start taking some ownership.
Mm-hmm.
And what are the warning signs that your body's giving you, and know that they're going to change over time.
Mm-hmm.
And especially during all these things, what are you saying to yourself?
Yes.
You know,
Huge.
and our self-talk,
Yeah.
we're hearing a lot about self-care and taking care of yourself. And well, how are you talking to yourself? um, and then once we recognize, how all three are working either together or apart, we can try to work to get them together
And
with
a
different
synergy.
skills, um, and strategies. And then we can go on to the next level. And I say this in the book, I don't know how many times: if any step causes a trigger of any kind, stop right now. It's
Right.
kind of like, stop right here, do not pass go.
Right.
um, it, Call somebody. I have 800 numbers in there,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't want it to be a trigger. I want it to be a tool.
Yes.
And there's a real specific difference. And if you are in a vulnerable state, I would not recommend this book at all.
Right.
And I'm gonna tell you straight up.
Right. Yeah.
um,
Well, you're asking people to step into that accountability and responsibility to take themselves to that balance, that equilibrium of managing their lives. If you're in a state of crisis, you can't manage anything. You have to get out of the crisis first, because asking someone to take accountability for their emotion right now, it's like telling somebody who's depressed to snap out of it. It can
right,
trigger and push them the other way. So if somebody's in a state of trauma or crisis, they need different form of help right now. You're the next level. I've
right,
got myself back to myself. I now need to know how to manage and maintain this.
right. And what because it's the internet, Sarah, and I'm always the overcautious one with
Yeah,
these things. I really am. I always, in my entire life, have erred on the side of caution. I've never dealt with a crisis situation by myself. I always have a colleague with me.
right,
Um,
exactly.
so if you're in denial and one of these things causes a trigger, you or causes you to think, why me? Or if you have thoughts of, hurting yourself or anything else, you need to stop right there. And
Yeah.
I have had that, I put that disclaimer in there, because when we talk about stress and we talk about taking ownership
Hmm.
of what our warning signs are, a lot of people think they're ready for that, but they're
Right.
not.
Yeah.
And so, since I'm not there to see
Yeah.
the person,
Yeah.
um, now if I was going to have a Zoom call, that would
Yeah.
give me some idea of where the person is at. But I want to make sure that this is a good tool and not something that sets somebody off. So in
That's
the
what makes you different to a lot of coaches, and that's why you're a consultant. Because a lot of coaches just buy my book; it will solve all your problems.
no, no, no,
You are very, very mindful of the fact that this is not one size fits all, and it's
no.
there for the people who are at this particular stage and able to recognize the triggers, able to use the tools because they are at that stage in their development. And thank you for that disclaimer, and also for putting that first above, I need to sell the book.
Well, and it's not even for sale. I mean, it's free. I mean,
Right, exactly.
but but even if it is free, I
Yes,
still I still want it to be an asset, not a
yes,
liability.
right. I think it's an excellent idea for people to get the book, look through it before they go through it, to have a Zoom call with you, to book you.
Yeah,
Because now you can gauge whether they're ready for it, or are they only ready for certain stages. Could they do with a pal that's going to help them through the book? Or can
right,
you be that companion to help them through the book? And that's what you're there for, right?
right,
So,
exactly.
what are your programs that you offer, and how do people get hold of you to book you for a program?
Um, right now, I'm in an infancy transition, so the easiest way is to go to the website, fill out, yes, I'd like to set up an appointment, and then we'll go from there, and I'll email you dates and times for a Zoom call, um, and what it is you need. I haven't really set up a program. I'm going to be very honest because I want to see what people need first.
Right,
I'm going
yes.
to just, I am not the one that's going to say, okay, well, I'm going to do this 6 week program and then you're going to be
Right.
magically cured.
Hmm.
Well, you know what? It doesn't work that way.
No,
And I don't work that way.
right.
And so I never have, and I'm not going to. I'm
And
not.
with how many years of teaching behind you in all different grades, you're bringing that expertise of recognizing what a student needs. And in a way, this is a student, isn't it?
Yeah. And then I want to get to know how you take in information, which
Yeah.
is a big thing for me.
Yes.
As a school psych and as a learning disability specialist, um, I want to know how you take in information because most of my students are visual kinesthetic learners, and sitting here going wah 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 is
Right.
not going to work for them.
Right.
You know, so I want to, and that's why in the book I called it an e-workbook because there's an accountability section
Hmm.
after each part. And I say again, if you're not ready for it, stop. Because if you're not ready to take responsibility and accountability, then the only person you're hurting is yourself.
But it's also to understand what you mean by that. It's not like you got yourself into this, so therefore take responsibility. No, you're not asking people to be responsible in that way. You're asking people to take the accountability and responsibility for their recovery and to recognize the skills and the tools they need in order to do that. So there is no blame or anything else
Mm-mm.
about where you're at. It's the responsibility of where you can go from here.
It doesn't matter why or how we got where we're at.
Right. We're just here. What are we going to do now?
We're here
Yes.
because the 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 past and yesterday, yeah, we may have to deal with that at some point in time, but not today. And
Right.
I mean, and I most likely am not that person that's going to get you through the healing process of that past because I'm going to refer you
Yeah.
straight away to a therapist or a psychiatrist straight away,
Hmm.
because I recognize those professional boundaries.
Right.
So um, I want to make sure that people understand that. I want to make sure, having watched for the last year and a half this whole online social media um, competitiveness to get
Yes.
people and pay high dollar, and the biggest dollar is going to get the biggest bang. Well, you know what? I don't think so.
Right.
Um,
And that the fruitfulness is in the, there's people with knowledge, but I always say, unless you actually understand the wisdom of that knowledge
right.
is just data. What you bring to the table is the years that you have gone through, not only before you became a teacher and everything you did then, the caring, in being a teacher, you were working with differently abled children, and so you recognized their their gifts of what they did have, the challenges of what they didn't, and how to navigate those challenges. For going through your own health challenge, you've learned to understand the boundaries and what you need to do, the triggers, what you need to do to take care of yourself. By taking all those years of practical
All
wisdom,
those
inner
years.
wisdom, own it, baby.
Oh,
You
I'm gonna get. I'm gonna have to go touch up that gray really quick.
We're taking that abundant wisdom
There we go.
is it's coming from not only the practical of what you know how to apply
Right.
to, but it's coming from the understanding of what is needed, because that's really where your specialty is,
Yeah.
right? Your
My
specialty is understanding what is needed according to who the person is, so it's not one size fits all, and how to communicate with that person in a way they're going to understand and in a way they can apply it into their own lives to empower their own lives.
right. And I think the key word is empowerment. And
Yes,
in fact, my email is empower at Miss Brat's Corner.
right.
Um, so if you have any questions, you can email me there. But empowerment is
Yes,
a huge thing.
yes.
Empowerment, boundaries. What was the other B word that we?
Balance.
There you go. But I knew it was a B word. Um, it wasn't the BS, so it was a B word.
That's what we start off with. Let's deal with
There,
the
there you
BS and
go.
find the balance of the boundaries and the
Okay,
empowerment.
there you go.
Because
So
it's all about our own self empowerment, isn't it?
it
And
is,
it's how
it
do
is.
we get to that? And and the things what we're working with in to receive our beautiful self-empowerment, becomes our meaningful purpose, or becomes who we are. I mean, what we discover out of that. Look what you've discovered on your journey of life, of what you're empowered to do, and
Right.
how you can give empowerment to other people. And that, that wonderful abundant wisdom that you're now sharing with people comes from a place of you practically applying, but also applying it to yourself and knowing
Right.
what really works. And for me, I know myself, I don't want to go with someone who's got a piece of paper saying they're certified. I want to go with someone who's lived it. Because you've lived it, you understand it, you're going to be more understanding of what I'm going through and how to navigate through it. Because you're navigating them to their own empowerment.
Right. It's not important for me to have a bank account, or I've read so many people. It's important for me, and I've said this all along with my students across the boards, is I'm going to teach you skills and strategies to help you be successful,
Right.
that work for you, and give you resources,
Yes.
because I'm not 110% the answer for everybody.
No.
And so I may need to refer you to other resources, because the power comes in utilizing the resources to the best of their ability to help you get to where you want to go.
Right.
So, and then the key is to pay it forward. And I
Right.
said this last week, and I'll say it again this week. It's really important that we learn to start paying it forward again and making a difference. Because if you see somebody that's in the situation that you're in, or you were in,
Mm-hmm.
or not sure how to navigate, then you can direct them to either a person, a resource, or a tool,
Yes.
because now you have that knowledge and
Right.
you can share that. So,
And there is a human obligation to share it. Right.
and you and I see that,
Yes.
and there's a plethora of people that do not see it that way.
No.
And like we've said, we can change what we can change,
Right. Well,
and we can.
I put it this way, you're an inspiration that is an invitation for those that are ready to hear and see and receive and participate.
Right.
We are an Orchard of Wisdom library here at Self Discovery Media, and not one size fits all. You're going to find the person that you resonate with. That's the reason why we do the shows.
Right.
You're going to hear you and go, I hear you. I like your style. You're going to take me slowly through this process. And you're not going to demand that in 6 weeks I'm going to be such and such, right? You're going to allow the person to be whatever label to be. And if they need to stop at a certain page, and need to work on that for a little longer before they're ready to go on to the next level, there's no
Right.
persecution from you.
No.
And that's the thing, you're going to nurture them through it at their pace and allowing them to really find their feet, find their balance, find their boundaries, learn their triggers, and empower themselves to what they can do without focusing on what they can't. Right? That
Exactly.
navigating through to their own empowerment. And I love the work that you do. I mean, please, people, go back and listen to the show on Raising Our Gifted Children and the Forgotten Children series. The wisdom that she gives on children's education and how we need to educate our children today, especially our wonderfully differently abled children. And I'm not talking about differently abled in a narrow sense. I'm talking in a broad sense, because our children today cannot learn the way the old curriculum has laid out. In many ways, they're more advanced than us, and we need to adapt to the way that they are learning. And I think that's a lot to do with adults as well, right? We've been so restricted in that linear path, and everything we've been wanting to blur outside the lines. It's because we're not meant to go straight, and it's okay to go in a spiral. As long as you're not stressed about it. That's the important thing.
Well, and if you are, it's okay to regroup and refocus.
And how to manage it. Yes, exactly. So your site, my darling.
It's www.missbratscorner.com.
And that's MS Brats, BRATTS.
One T.
One T. So MSBRATS
S.
corner.com. And the
Right.
email is
Empower
empower at missbratscorner.com.
missbratscorner.com.
please reach out, because you are free to have a conversation with someone. Your book is free, so they can download it right here on the posting. They've got it. If you're listening to the show and it's not on the YouTube or on the posting where you're seeing the information, you can get it from missbratscorner.com, but it's right here too. You can download it, you can take a look at it, and then you want that next stage is reach out to Susie and have that conversation and see where that connection is. Her passion and her conviction has always been to empower people into living their own beautiful, abundant lives. That's where she gets her pleasure, seeing people come into themselves. And she will go at your pace. There is no, you've got to win this race. There is no race to win. It's just finding your equilibrium, which we all want to have, because that balance of life is what gives us a fruitful life. So, Susie, it's been an absolute delight to have you back on the air with us again.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Sara.
And as I said, go back and listen to the other show, and please support our program with the forgotten children, because one thing we've both realized, from many adults that are very stressed today, there's an inner child in them that's calling out, and we need to address that inner child as well. So until next time, folks, you don't have to be stressed. You just have to learn to manage it, which Susie's here to help you do so at missbratscorner.com. Until next time, folks, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. To hear more of these wonderful shows on selfdiscoverymedia.com, just look up our podcast genre list. You will see many shows archives there ready for listening. Don't forget to share these wonderful shows. And if you wish to be a guest or a host, or you have an organization that needs to be highlighted, contact us at info@selfdiscoverymedia.com. Bye for now.